From Harden's expectation of securing a huge contract with the Rockets going down the drain, to the new head coach focusing more on developing young talent, here's why Ime Udoka is responsible for James Harden. The rumors about him heading back to the Houston Rockets need to be put to rest, because a reunion isn't in the cards anymore, and I'll tell you why. The issue is that he isn't too keen on taking another discount, and the Rockets aren't willing to meet his contract demands, which makes it pretty clear that Houston isn't an option for him anymore. They're out of the running, and it makes sense from the team's perspective too, because he wasn't interested in taking any kind of discount, especially not for 2 years in a row. He made around $34 to $35 million this year, and could be looking at making $50 to $52 million. Last year, he did a favor for the 76ers when he declined his $47.4 million player option for the 2022-23 season, which allowed the Sixers to use the money to bring in some important players like PJ Tucker, in hopes of making a deep playoff run. Even though the team remained competitive throughout the season, they didn't snag the championship. Now, it seems like the Beard is looking for the biggest possible payday before he hits 34 in August, which makes getting a max contract offer very important for him. On the flip side, the Rockets aren't too motivated to offer him that max contract, as it'd affect their plans to sign other free agents like Brook Lopez or Dylan Brooks. Meanwhile, the Sixers, with team president Daryl Morey leading the charge, are ready to offer him a sweet raise, all to keep him in the city of brotherly love. The big question now is whether Philadelphia will go all out and offer him that max contract, since he doesn't have a ton of leverage to get exactly what he wants, especially if the Rockets decide to give up on bringing him back home. Granted, there were some other teams like the Miami Heat that might be interested, and Gilbert Arenas had some hilarious reasons for suggesting them. The Phoenix Suns were also in the mix for a while, but their trade for Bradley Beal took them out of the running. At the moment, Harden and the Sixers might be stuck with each other, and that might not be such a bad thing, especially if the team and their new coaching staff can find a way to maximize the partnership between him and the reigning MVP, Joel Embiid. Speaking of new staff, Houston had a change of heart after they brought in Udoka as head coach. Coincidence? I think not, because after he came on board, the Rockets started reevaluating their roster and plans for free agency, and they had their eyes on Fred VanVleet from the Toronto Raptors, making him their top priority for the lead guard role. See, it makes sense when there's a bunch of young talent and over $64 million to spend in cap space. All things considered, the player's return to Houston just isn't in the cards anymore. Now, don't get me wrong. Rockets officials, including owner Tillman Fertitta, his son Patrick, and general manager Raphael Stone, have lots of love for James and his game. But they decided to take a pass on giving him another shot with the team, because of Udoka's past coaching experience with him in Brooklyn, which played a role in their decision-making process. You see, his reputation precedes him as a successful coach, leading the Boston Celtics to the NBA Finals in 2022, which also gave him some leverage and made his voice matter in important decisions. But Stone does have the final say. Another factor at play is the Rockets' young roster and their plans for the upcoming season. Since they're not gunning for a championship just yet, they've considered how each potential player would fit culturally and in terms of chemistry with their existing young core. Ultimately, it's clear that Udoka preferred VanVleet over Harden for the lead guard spot. Maybe his defensive skills and less ball-dominant play style made him a better fit. Or it could be more about how he'd gel with the team in the locker room. Either way, they made their decision, and they're comfortable with it. As for Harden, he's thinking about a move to the Clippers, and there's a good chance a trade might happen. Toward the end of the previous season, the 76ers were unsure about his future with the team too. Mostly because despite having Embiid on their side, their playoff run wasn't exactly what they had hoped for, and unfortunately, the player didn't quite live up to the expectations fans had for him either. Now, there's a real possibility that he might leave Philly too, but it's not going to be the Rockets, since they're officially out of the picture thanks to Udoka, who's not keen on having him back in Texas. After all, the Rockets have been putting in the work to build a competitive team, and they've already got some promising players on board. like Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., Alperen Şengün, Jabari Smith, and now Van Vliet as well. Together, this bunch makes the team an exciting prospect, and Coach Udoka believes that Van Vliet can step into the role Harden used to play, adding a new spark to the team, being 5 years younger and all. On top of that, there's one thing about the player that doesn't sit well with some coaches, including Udoka, which is how he likes to keep a tight grip on the ball for a long time. See, his coaching style is all about ball movement and team play. Back when he led the Celtics, his team loved sharing the rock and running plays without relying too much on individual ball dominance. That's where Harden's style might not gel with the new coach's vision, which probably played a big part in his decision to say no to his comeback. Besides, need I remind you that they've got $60 million in salary cap space, which is like hitting the jackpot in the NBA. With that kind of money, they've got a chance to make some serious moves and strengthen their young roster, and the new head coach has some interesting ideas about how to take the team to the next level. Sure, they can bring in new talent through free agency, but Udoka also believes that developing the players they already have is essential for the team's growth. Take Kevin Porter Jr., for example. He's been the starting point guard for the Rockets for the past 2 seasons, and he's been darn good at it, becoming one of the best catch-and-shoot guys from beyond the arc in the entire league. The only problem is, he doesn't get as many opportunities for those shots when he's the one handling the ball most of the time, which is why the coach has a clever plan to make the most of his skills. Essentially, he wants to run more of the offense through Şengün, the big man with some serious passing chops. Because when you've got a guy as big as him who can initiate the offense from different spots on the court, no less, it's a game changer. He gives props to Nikola Jokic from the Denver Nuggets, who's a master at this kind of play. Having a playmaking big like Şengün can create more space and easier scoring opportunities for the rest of the team. After all, with him leading the charge on offense, the Rockets can move Porter around more strategically and get him those sweet spot-up three-pointers he's so good at. Imagine the damage he could do if he gets more chances to let it fly from beyond the arc. Udoka's got some ideas for Şengün on the defensive end too, as he plans to tweak the defensive strategies to suit his strengths, which means minimizing those drop coverages that haven't been his strong suit, and maximizing his chances to switch up matchups where he's shown some real promise in his first 2 NBA seasons. The coach knows that each player has their strengths and limitations, and he's all about adjusting the game plan to make the most of what they bring to the table, instead of just opting for a player like Harden, who hasn't been performing his best with the Sixers anyway. For him, it's about putting the players in positions where they can succeed and make a real impact on the court. So, from the new head coach focusing more on developing young talent, to Harden lucking out off a big payday from the Rockets, this was why Ime Udoka is responsible for James Harden.